Hello everybody, welcome to Coffee Tip Wednesday, where the goal is to help you get cafe quality coffee at home, one tip at a time. Today we are going to talk about a very controversial topic, light roast versus dark roast. And I think I'll break this up into a series of videos to talk about the differences to kind of make it a little bit more consumable, because there's a lot that we can talk about on this topic. So today we're just going to talk about the general idea of light roast versus dark roast. Why do some shops roast their coffee really dark? Why do others roast them really light? How did this all kind of come about? Is there a right or wrong way to do it? We'll kind of get into everything light roast versus dark roast. So this is a part one of a series on light roast versus dark roast. So let's get into it. So first we're going to look at, so here's a coffee from my good friends over at Sweet Bloom Coffee. So let's open this guy up. Whenever you open a fresh bag of coffee, you always have to smell it. It's like the greatest smell in the world. And a little bit off topic of this, but there's perfume scientists or perfumiers or whatever you want to call them in Europe. They have tried really, really hard to mimic this smell of freshly roasted coffee, but it is so complicated that they haven't been able to do it. And they actually started breaking down the science of coffee, and there's like thousands of different chemical compounds that create the smell of coffee, and the reason it's so difficult to recreate. Anyways, fascinating little thing about coffee. So on that, if you can make a coffee smell, like a coffee flavored cologne or perfume, it's a brilliant idea and you might make a lot of money, but it'd be a lot of work. Anyways, so let's take a look at some of the coffee we have here. So as you can see, is this light? Is this dark? And let's start with the first thing I think is most important when we're talking about coffee, is that for a long time there was this whole conversation of should you roast coffee dark or should you roast coffee light? When I first got into specialty coffee 10 plus years ago, my whole thing was, oh, it's got to be light. I only wanted the lightest roasted coffees. I thought the lighter the better. But as you start to roast your own coffee, as I've gotten to know other roasters, professional roasters, and understanding the process of roasting coffee, reading a number of books by some of the world's best roasters, you realize that it's not about, the conversation shouldn't be about light versus dark. It should be about development. So what do we mean by developed? So was the coffee roasted to a degree to where it allows the coffee to kind of shine and show you its characteristics in the cup? So if it's too light, so if we go to the one extreme, it's too light, it's probably going to be a little bit hay, it's going to have this grassy green smell. If you've ever smelled green coffee, and I actually have some, I'll pull some out on the next video so we can take a look at it on the next series. But if you look at green coffee, so coffee that has just been milled and processed and it's ready to be roasted, it's very green, it kind of smells like grass. And as you're actually roasting coffee, as it goes through the Maillard reaction phase, after it has kind of dried out, you start getting the Maillard reaction phase. That's kind of the first smell that you use as you're roasting, and you kind of notice this hay or grassy smell, and then the coffee is starting to turn yellow. So it's kind of letting you know that you're starting to develop those sugars and those flavors and those acids in the coffee that kind of let it shine. So the idea is that a coffee should be developed, and it shouldn't be just roasted light or dark. So it shouldn't be one or the other. So one way to tell if a coffee's been roasted really well is you can take like a pill splitter. So when I do my espresso reviews, I always sample a few beans out as I'm going along, and I split it with a pill splitter. And what you'll notice is inside the coffee, it should be like an even tone top to bottom. So not like a steak, like if you eat meat and you like steaks, a lot of times they're seared on the outside. That medium rare steak, it's like seared on the outside and then has that transition to that really red pink center. We don't want that in coffee. We actually want it to be a solid, even color top to bottom. So that's kind of the first thing, is that we shouldn't be roasting coffee to either be dark or light. We should be developing a coffee to allow it to shine. Now, especially if we're buying higher priced green coffees. And really, I would say in the going market right now, really anything over $3 to $4 a pound green, stuff that's scoring in the 90s or higher, you should really be trying to develop those coffees to shine, to allow them to shine, because you're spending so much money on the green coffee as it is. So you should really let that coffee speak for itself. So that's kind of the first piece, is that we shouldn't even be thinking about light versus dark. We should be thinking about developing a coffee to kind of allow it to shine and show us its characteristics and really kind of present itself in the cup. So that's our first part on light coffee versus dark coffee. And the next week we'll get into how did dark roast come about? So why were dark roasts so prominent? And now why in this third wave has these lighter roasts come about? And now why are we? And then we'll kind of talk about light roasts, and then we'll get into, now we start to see coffees kind of going a little bit darker again, and we'll kind of talk about that. Hopefully it'll bring us full circle back to this original conversation of actually developing a coffee and not just roasting it to a certain degree or another. All right, and as always, if you like this video, click the little subscribe button, hit the little notification bell so you get notified for our next Coffee Tip Wednesday, and be sure to share it with your friends. The more people you share it with, the more content I can bring you and help you get better at making cafe quality coffee at home. And as always, coffee, pedal, repeat.